All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're taking a pretty sharp, uncompromising look at modern culture to unpack the massive philosophical difference between genuine intellectuals and, well, performative pseudo-intellectuals. This explainer is going to ask a rather uncomfortable question about the influencers and experts we're bombarded with every single day. Are the people we consider smart actually intellectual, or are they just playing a really convincing part for an audience? I mean, listen to this sentence for a second. I suffer from existential alienation as a result of water fragmentation. Sounds incredibly deep, right? Well, actually, it's total nonsense. Modern pseudo-intellectuals use dense, completely nonsensical jargon exactly like this in their 15-second social media reels, simply to sound smart. It's an intellectual smokescreen. It's designed to create this halo of authority around the speaker, essentially forcing you to just listen and nod along, even if the words themselves mean absolutely nothing. Which really begs the question, what actually makes someone a true intellectual today? We have to step back and ask ourselves whether memorizing a bunch of out-of-context quotes or holding a prestigious degree actually equates to critical thinking. Is being a walking encyclopedia really the same thing as being a wise, conscious thinker? To build a solid foundation here, let's look at the Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci. Back in the 1930s, in his prison notebooks, he defined what he called the traditional intellectual. Think of your classic tweed jacket academic or university professor. Their primary function in society is essentially just to preserve and recite existing knowledge. They memorize the books, pass the information along, and generally remain pretty detached from the messy, practical world outside. But Gramsci didn't stop there. He contrasted those ivory tower academics with a truly powerful concept, organic intellectuals. Now, these are individuals who arise directly from the masses. They aren't detached at all. They intimately understand the struggles of everyday people because they actually share that reality. They eat at the same tables, and they use their platform to give a real voice to the genuine problems of their communities. And history is honestly packed with these organic intellectuals. The source points to figures like Che Guevara through his revolutionary actions, Malcolm X through his incredibly potent speeches, or even Tupac Shakur through his music. Their minds merged with reality to produce actual, tangible results for their society, rather than just talking down to everyone from a podium. So the crucial takeaway here is that the modern pseudo-intellectual we see everywhere today is something else entirely. They have essentially hijacked the prestigious title of the intellectual, but they've completely abandoned the societal function. They are totally disconnected from reality. You'll see them dropping out-of-context quotes from Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire just to farm likes online, completely ignoring the historical context of those quotes or how they might actually apply to real life today. To understand why they do this, there's a fascinating sociological concept called symbolic capital. If you think of modern culture as a literal marketplace, complex words and academic jargon are used as currency. By spending these heavy, complicated words, the pseudo-intellectual is basically purchasing social status and a fake aura of authority. It's a tool for control, really. It's a way to dominate a conversation and force others to submit just by overwhelming them with a massive vocabulary. And this ties in perfectly with the philosophical difference between having and being. Because these performative influencers lack genuine essence, that authentic being that makes up a true intellectual, they are forced to rely entirely on having. They obsess over possessing things just to prove they exist. But in this case, instead of hoarding money, they're hoarding complex vocabulary, university titles, and borrowed thoughts to fill this deep, echoing psychological vacuum. To really make this click, the source uses this absolutely brilliant metaphor. Picture the human brain as a 3-story building. By looking at these 3 floors, the instincts, the memory, and the processing, we can map out exactly where the fake intellectual gets stuck and why just memorizing things doesn't make you a genius. Let's start on the ground floor. Floor 1. The instincts. This is the oldest part of our brain. It is driven purely by raw biological survival, reproduction, staying alive, and gaining social dominance. It's that base animal instinct we share with reptiles and insects. When a person is entirely driven by the desire for wealth, status, and showing off their power to others, they are operating exclusively out of this first floor. Think about a peacock for a second. It displays those massive, colorful feathers for one reason: to attract a mate and signal biological dominance. A pseudo-intellectual constantly flashing a doctor title in their Twitter bio or bragging about an expensive lifestyle is doing the exact same thing. They aren't elevating culture. They're just acting on first-floor biological instincts to gain status. Their PhD is literally just their version of the peacock's feathers. Taking the elevator up to the second floor, we find memory. This is the mammalian ability to store and recall information. Think of it as your brain's biological hard drive. This floor is what allows you to memorize a complex poem, recall the exact dates of historical battles, or recite the works of famous philosophers. It's an incredible storage facility functioning very much like a high-capacity computer. But here is the kicker. Having a massive amount of storage does not make you an intellectual. A pseudo-intellectual might have incredible rote memory. They might know exactly what Kant or Nietzsche said word for word. But they will completely freeze up if you ask them to actually apply that philosopher's theory to a real modern problem, like, say, today's unemployment crisis. They have the raw data, for sure, but absolutely no way to use it. Because to actually use it, you need to reach floor 3, the processing. This is where the magic happens. This is the uniquely human ability to take that raw data from the second floor and analyze it. It's taking this simple observation of an apple falling from a tree, breaking it down, and processing that raw data to create an entirely new framework of knowledge, like the theory of gravity. True, world-changing intellect lives right up here on the top floor. Now, the catch is you critically need both data and processing. The source warns that ancient Greek philosophers had incredible processing power, but very little scientific data, so their conclusions about the physical world were often pretty flawed. On the flip side, modern pseudo-intellectuals are like walking encyclopedias. They have massive amounts of data, but zero processing power to actually form an original, independent thought. This leads to a really provocative concept mentioned in the source, the paradox of the performative PhD. The argument is that simply holding a PhD doesn't automatically grant you high awareness. Why? Because the pursuit of that degree is so often driven by first-floor instincts, the need for societal respect, a fancy title, a good salary, and achieving it relies almost entirely on second-floor memory to pass exams. Very often, outside their highly specific field, they totally lack the third-floor independent processing required of a true intellectual. And on the flip side, you have this wild inverse relationship. Historically, true geniuses, think of figures like Nietzsche or Dostoevsky, had such incredibly high processing power that they often failed completely at first-floor survival instincts. They lived chaotic personal lives, struggled with relationships, and sometimes faced total mental ruin. Their processing power was off the charts, but their basic biological drive for status and stability was practically non-existent. So, pulling this all together, what actually makes a true intellectual? Well, it isn't just about hoarding a ton of information. A true intellectual takes a firm moral stance on the knowledge they hold. They view it as their duty to elevate society, not just their own personal status. They consistently challenge the status quo. They say no when everyone else is saying yes. And most importantly, they embrace and speak the uncomfortable truth. Here is what it ultimately boils down to. The performative pseudo-intellectual sells comfortable illusions. They use fancy jargon to flatter their audience, confirm their biases, and keep them happy just to maintain their follower counts. The true intellectual, however, offers terrifying, uncomfortable, but absolutely necessary truths. They are willing to be alienated and face the harsh realities that society desperately needs to hear in order to actually grow. So we're left with a pretty critical choice about our own media consumption and how we interact with information. Are you buying into comfortable illusions from performative influencers who just want to show off their symbolic capital? Or are you brave enough to process the unvarnished, often harsh truth? The path of the true intellectual isn't easy, and it certainly isn't comfortable, but it's the only one that actually pushes humanity forward. Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a brand new lens to view the information you consume every single day.